Well, it's definitely been quite a while, hasn't it? Between the frankly absurd amount of homework the teachers are giving us, a couple quarantines, and the possibility of surgery earlier this month, I have had next to no time to do anything aside from school and pray that I don't have to have surgery, which I ended up not having to get, so that was good. Anyway, enough about my personal life. Let's look at another one of my conlangs. Early Nuqrian, at this point, is a little over a year old. It came about at the same time as Keishaz, and it hasn't changed a whole lot since then. I've added some features to make it a little more interesting, but the only thing that has truly changed about it is the amount of vocab it's accumulated, somewhere in the neighborhood of 500 words. That may not sound like a lot for some people, but it's a lot for me. There isn't much history outside of the world, but Early Nuqrian has quite the reputation within Keishaz. As you can see from this language tree here, it's the ancestor of a majority of the Nukric languages, and it also has the status of a very widely used trade and, later, liturgical language. As one of the two daughters of the Proto-Nuqrian language, Early Nuqrian is the sister language of Old Relian and the ancestor of languages spoken everywhere from Kandavar to the deserts of Deishamaz, all the way to the Pomagan border with Hasadia. The three primary branches that can claim descent from Early Nuqrian are the Miran languages, the Zeltsin languages, and the Hasadian languages. Surprise, surprise, I focused mainly on the Miran languages. Within the confines of Mira, Early Nuqrian evolves into Middle Nuqrian, standardized by Shamur the Liberator, and eventually Late Nuqrian after the fall of the Miran Empire. Even further in the future, after the rise of the Kingdom of Shamuz, it evolves into Neo-Nuqrian, so you could almost think of it like Coptic. It's been around for a very long time, but in many, many different forms. The only difference is that it doesn't die out. I won't spend too much more time on in-world history, but here's a table comparing all the extant Nukric languages, as well as Early Nuqrian and Proto-Nuqrian. You can see I've even included the two Relian languages here too, inspired by French and whichever Celtic language you like. So yeah, I'll let you check this out for a bit, but I'd like to move on to the writing system, phonology, and grammar, and after that, we'll check out a few sentences in Early Nuqrian and break them down. This is the Ladzipular script, created by the Miran king Abgul after he had a dream in which Talib, the god of language, told him to start writing things down. So he created an alphabet that looks like this. It was designed to utilize as much of the free space on the paper as possible, hence the blocky shapes of the letters. An interesting thing here is that the consonants with voiced and unvoiced counterparts in Early Nuqrian are distinguished by a dot. For example, the symbol for P has no dot, and the symbol for B does. Now, let's move on to the grammar. For starters, Early Nuqrian is an SOV language. For the non-linguistically inclined who may still be watching this, that means that your subject comes first, like in English, but your object and verb are switched. So the sentence, I have a dog, becomes I a dog have. Does that make sense? I hope so. In addition to that, adjectives come after their nouns, which have 5 cases. Syllable structures, generally either CVC, CV, or VC. Stops come before fricatives, generally not after them. And there is kind of an actual verb system here. We'll get to that. I don't remember if I mentioned it in my Sparai video, but I despise putting together verb systems. They're not very interesting to me, they're not that fun to create, and I'm just lazy when it comes to that, so I generally don't bother with them. But for some reason, I did spend a bit of time on Early Nuqrian verbs, so I'll show you that too. First things first, the phonology. I've got a probably not great looking consonant table here that contains all the consonant sounds in Early Nuqrian. Also, here are the vowels. Probably more extensive than is necessary, but I'm an English speaker. I mean, look at how I pronounce the oo sound in my normal speech. It's weird. Moving on to the grammar part, let's start with nouns, because they may be the simplest of these. Nouns have 5 cases: nominative, accusative, genitive, dative, and ablative. As an example, I'm using the word mawat, or bird, which happens to be one of my favorite words in this language. As you can see, there is no special ending for the nominative case, but the others do have endings. We have mawatu for accusative, mawateg for genitive, like if the bird owns something, such as the bird's nest, mawatam for dative, or to the bird, and mawatolk for ablative, or from the bird. If a word happens to have multiple cases applied to it, the speaker picks one to use and discards the other one in the name of context. An important note here is that personal names do not take case endings, aside from the genitive, while place names do take case endings. To supplement this, there is a special pair of words for saying to and from a specific person, which are pom and ruk. One more thing, there is an agent suffix ul, which can be seen in one of my very first videos with the Caeruleus. To wrap up nouns, there is one singular plural suffix, az, or just z if there's already an a at the end. If there is another vowel already at the end of the word, such as in the word padu, you just keep the vowel, thus padu becomes padwaz. Next, we go to adjectives. Adjectives generally end in e, as exemplified by the words kazvi and sionili. Numbers don't have to end in e, though. There is also a comparative prefix, a superlative prefix, and a feature I don't see very often in conlangs that is very much underused, an excessive prefix, as in too many. Just to show you the power of these prefixes, here are some examples. We can use the word large, shpuri, for all of these, but we can also use these prefixes on nouns, believe it or not. So, in addition, I will also use the word for people, kanakaz. If one thing is larger than another thing, it would be manchpuri. And if there are more people in Shanghai than Chicago, which there definitely are, there would be mankanakaz. Moving up a step, if something is the largest of a group of objects, it would be renchpuri, or if one city has the most people out of all of them, it would have renkanakaz. Finally, if something is too big, it would be kebshpuri, and if there are too many people in one area, like at my school during this pandemic, there would be kebkanakaz. Seems simple enough, I hope. Alright, now let's tackle the verbs. Typical for one of my conlangs, there isn't much to look at here. There are only 3 tenses: past, present, and future. All verbs end in a, and these suffixes take the place of that sound, unless the word wouldn't sound right otherwise. There is also a system of present tense conjugations, shown in these tables here. I would like to note the distinction between inclusive and exclusive we, a feature I really like to see in conlangs. We also have some suffixes for reflexive, reciprocal, or each other, more or less, interrogative, so question verbs, imperative, or commands, and 2 words that come after verbs, giving them the habitual and progressive aspects. To wrap up the grammar part, we've got adverbs that end with this suffix, re, an alienable, inalienable possession distinction, postpositions, an optional copula, and an honorific suffix. Now, let's take a look at some sentences. For sentence number 1, we've got Tazked kfuzi ugets raksi tazku. The illness is infecting many around the world. Let's break this sentence down. Tazked is the noun form of the adjective tazki, which means sick or ill. Avid viewers will recall that the Miran god of illness is named Tazbin. That's no coincidence. Similarly, the word at the end of the sentence, tazku, means to sicken. You can see pretty clearly this SOV structure we've got here. In the middle, we have a pronoun for many, the undeclined version of world, since it's in a prepositional phrase, or postpositional, I guess, and the postposition raksi for around. Pretty simple once you wrap your anglophone head around the word order. Alright, now let's try another. Khadz-gzēro tarkhadok melidaksh. We have a friend from Tarkhad. This sentence is a tad more involved than the last. We have the inclusive we pronoun, so the speaker is probably only talking to someone else that has the same friend in Tarkhad. That has consequences for the verb at the end, the inalienable version of have conjugated for first person plural inclusive. Whew, that's not a mouthful at all. In the middle, we have friend with an accusative suffix, and the city name Tarkhad with an ablative suffix. A little Easter egg for you, if you watch the non-conlang content on this channel. If Tarkhad survived an angry king from another city, we would be talking about the 10 cities of the Nuke. But there are only 9 by the time Negev comes around. And there will be a video about that at some point. Alright, last sentence. Khadz-gzēro taz tonuaz shmaqēbu. The result of the dispute was that the 2 brothers fought each other. This one is kind of a weird one, but bear with me. If, in English, you have 2 nouns with the word of in between them, such as Tower of Bricks, it is translated into Early Nuqrian as Bricks Tower. That's what's happening here, although you could alternately translate this particular result of the dispute as the dispute's result, in which case you would have Khadz-gzēro. But I digress. This verb actually piques my interest, partially because shmaqēbu sounds amazing. It's pretty interesting grammatically too, though. For one, it's our first past tense verb, so the a falls off and is replaced with an e with a macron. Then, after that, we add the reciprocal suffix to stand in for the phrase each other. And in the middle of the sentence, the word taz means that kut is 2, coming after its noun, and tonuaz is the plural version of tonu, meaning brother. And there we have it. This was Early Nuqrian, possibly the most influential language in all of Dekabi, and one of my best conlangs, in my opinion. I'd like to say, if anyone watching with a channel of their own geared towards this sort of content would like to use any of my conlangs as an example in their videos, for whatever reason, just let me know and I'll help you out the best I can. You know where the Discord link is. Anyway, that's about it. Happy belated Thanksgiving, and I'll see you all in the next one.